welcome back to the Boropolis Podcast. Now we're about to do something that we haven't done in an awfully long time, to be honest. We're about to do a podcast and talk about 2 consecutive defeats. Nathan, I ask you how you are at the start of every podcast, and usually for the past few it's been, I'm sure you'll be fine, I'm sure you'll be in a good mood. Today is quite the opposite, because I'm sure you can't be feeling too great after those 2 games.
Not really, if I'm honest. On Wednesday, felt slightly hard done by with the result. But Saturday, a whole different story, really. You can't really have any qualms about the result. We were incredibly poor, but we'll get into that a bit later on.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we do have to talk about it. I think what's probably best is, of course, we go on to Wednesday. And, if you listen to this podcast week in, week out, as soon as Nathan made a comment about a certain Alexander Mitrovic in the last podcast, I knew Wednesday was going to go wrong. I knew how these football gods work. And if you don't know what the football gods are, then basically, if you say, things that incite the opposite happen, aka Nathan saying, well, I don't think Mitrovic has actually ever scored against Middlesbrough, then he will score in the next game. Before we talk about the incident where he did score and me and you just made eye contact in the stadium, and we'll get onto it because I just wasn't happy with you or the defendant, to be honest. I don't know what was worse. But let's talk about the team selection. A little bit of a surprise, to be honest. The changes that Chris Wilder made. Of course, Andras Sparrow and Duncan Watmore in after both Aaron Connolly and Balogun had good games away at Peterborough. Of course, Josh Coburn had scored, Connolly was effective, and Balogun had got on the score sheet. So a little bit of a surprise there. Possibly the bigger surprise for me, Peltier and Taylor coming in. Of course, Jones misses out through illness, but more so Bowler. I highlighted him in the last podcast, how effective he was and how much more balanced he made the team. Little bit surprised to see him drop out. For those sort of 4 changes, Nathan, how are you feeling about those?
Some of them strange more than anything. I think Watmore coming into the side was fair enough. He came off the bench at Peterborough, scored and set one up, made a big impact off the bench and did what he had to do when he came off that bench. So him being in the side was fair enough. Sparrow, I thought, was a bit strange, if I'm honest. When he didn't come on at Peterborough, I thought that proves how far he's fell in the pecking order under Chris Wilder when it comes to our forwards. But he found himself in from the start on Wednesday night, which you can argue is fair enough. He did start the majority of games under Wilder up until probably late February, early March time. So fair enough again. And then at right wing back, with Jones not being in the squad with illness, Peltier coming in there, it was a strange one at first, because I thought possibly the way we lined up could be Dijksteel at right wing back and Peltier in Dijksteel's role at centre half, but it wasn't that way. Peltier played as the right wing back, which was slightly strange. But then you could kind of tell the way things were going to go with the other side as well. When he selected Taylor over Bowler, he was going to play pretty much with the flat back 5 on Wednesday night and just try and combat Fulham that way, which is fair enough if you're going to try and hit them on the counter attack. But it just omits any sort of real pace in the side at that point, with no Bowler, no Jones. I suppose the only real pace that you've got is Tavernier driving through the middle of the park and Watmore up front. But yeah, the team doesn't look too bad. With Jones' omission, it looks a lot worse than it usually would with Jones in the side, because we know his threat and what he brings to this side. But yeah, a bit of a strange team selection, I thought.
Yeah, I think, again, what you've just said, when first seeing the team, I thought it was a guarantee that Dijksteel would play in the more advanced role and Peltier would drop back. You know, given Dijksteel's very comfortable on the ball, I think he has attributes where he could play as a wing back, as a makeshift one, albeit, but he could probably play there in a more effective way than perhaps Peltier. So yeah, that was a little bit of a confusing one, and for me, again, the big call, I think, with Sparrow and Watmore, you know, often in the bigger games so far this season, that's been the pairing that Wilder's gone with. You look back at sort of Forest and Bournemouth, and I think Hernandez played, I want to say, against Bournemouth and started that game, but Sparrow was in the team and Watmore was introduced as well. But certainly, more often than not, even Sheffield United as well, he's opted to go with Andres Sparrow. Even when he's had Balogun and Connolly at his disposal. Just going into the game really now, first half I actually thought I was a little bit disappointed because for so long we've seen this team, especially at home as well, go at teams, create chances, be on the front foot. And I completely understand why that wasn't the case in the first half, but it was such a polar opposite to what we've seen. It almost caught me by surprise a little bit. I think, obviously, Peltier being at right wing back has its real drawbacks. I think he knows, and any other Middlesbrough fan know, he's never going to even do half the job that Isaiah Jones does for us. And I think, you know, that was the key theme of the game. It just highlighted how much we miss Isaiah Jones and how much of an impact he has in all of our games. Even when you think he has quieter games, he seems to always be involved. But yeah, just in general in the first half, ironically, the main sort of incident in that first half was a penalty shout where Peltier gets into the box, tries to nod it past Joe Bryan, I think it is, and it clips Bryan's arm. I mean, I think there's a possible claim for a penalty there. Nathan, what did you make of that one?
Probably just half claim, really.
Yeah.
Wasn't any sort of blatant penalty call, I don't think. I think we're probably just clutching at straws, really, from a first half that didn't offer too much at all in terms of any real chances in that first half. I don't think it was a penalty, but just sort of moving into the first half, with Taylor at left wing back, I thought that he struggled against Harry Wilson. Most fullbacks do, but he was getting dragged out of position a lot, which freed up Wilson in a lot of space on that right-hand side for Fulham. Then McNair was struggling to get across and sort of things like that. But yeah, it was a first half really where chances were few and far between for both sides, really. A few nervy moments when Fulham are in and around Boro's penalty area, but that's just because of the quality that their players have. But the only real chance in that first half that stands out was Crux's, which was deflected over the bar. Tavernier driving through the middle of the park, crosses a ball in, and Crux is there, tries to side foot it with his right foot, and it comes off Tim Ream and deflects over the bar. But yeah, a first half that was relatively quiet in terms of chances, but Fulham certainly had the better of things.
Yeah, it felt for me in that first half. I don't have the possession stats, but I'd be amazed if Fulham had any less than sort of 65% possession, because it felt like for large periods of the game, even, you know, they're certainly not of the level that Chelsea are, but, you know, there was periods in that Chelsea Cup tie where I just thought we can't get the ball off them. And that's what it felt a little bit like for me in certain spells against Fulham. As you say, we probably had the best chance of the first half. Obviously, that Crooks chance. And I don't think you can really do much more, in fairness. It's just a good block by Tim Ream, who I thought, was, despite the fact every time Fulham get promoted, he almost drops into the reserves and you don't hear of him. when he's in the Championship with Fulham, he's a top level Championship defender, and especially with that left foot, very effective in the way that Fulham play. Moving into the second half, because in fairness, there wasn't a great deal that actually happened in the first half. They early on have an amazing chance, which still now, I don't know how a player of Bobby Reid's quality hasn't put in the back of the net. I think the theme of sort of us maybe being a little bit cautious continued. Probably not so much as what we had been in the first half. I think Wilder probably told them at halftime, you can be, of course, be conservative, but, there's still a football match here that we could potentially win. We're not playing against Barcelona, so be a little bit more brave with the ball. But then with being a little bit more brave, of course, you open yourself up to attacks. And Fulham did that down the right. Kenny Tete, I think it's McNair that he sends to the shops, whips a ball across the face of the goal, and Bobby Decordova-Reid at the back stick, you're just waiting for him to tap it in, and he somehow slides it wide. I was in utter disbelief, to be honest, when he missed, Nathan.
Yeah, it was a good move, but as I said slightly earlier, McNair and Taylor both struggled with combating Wilson pretty much all day, really. Fulham have the ball on the left-hand side, switch it into Mitrovic. Mitrovic turns and drives forward, knocks it out wide to Wilson, and Wilson sort of pretends to cut in onto his left. Tete is overlapping. Both McNair and Taylor follow Wilson's move inside. He cuts it back to Tete down the line, and he fires that ball across the face of goal, across the 6-yard box. Lumley chooses to not dive and try and get something on it and deflect it away from the path of Reid, who, I think he's just probably not up with play at that point. He mustn't have been, because he's on the stretch and he flicks that ball wide when it looked like it was just going to be 1-0 pretty much at the start of the second half. A big chance missed, and a bit of a let off.
Yeah, as you say, a massive let off, in fairness. From that point onwards, actually, I felt that it sort of shocked us into action a little bit, and we started seeing us be a little bit more brave with our passing and our attacks. And Andres Sparrow, probably a little bit sick of having almost no service, gets the ball out his feet, probably just on the edge of the box, maybe he's a little bit further back, unleashes a great shot, in fairness. Probably the first time that we'd seen Rodak really have to dive and make a save. He does so, he doesn't marry anyone. He manages to get back up and sort of, I think he tries to attempt to stop it from going out for a corner. I think we eventually did, but actually that was probably, the closest that we went to scoring up until that point, to be honest.
Yeah, it was a good move down the left. Baller driving forward after coming on, and he cut it back. Sparrow on the edge of the box takes a touch out his feet, gets that shot with a lot of power, going low and hard into Rodak's near post, but it's a good save. Sparrow using the conditions, which were horrific at the Riverside after half time, torrential rain, using that rain to skip the ball off the surface and test Rodak. But it was Boro's best effort of the game probably so far, and really Boro, if you look at the chances throughout the game, probably had the better of things, really, if you look at the chances throughout the full game. But following that chance, it was calamity.
Yeah, calamity. Now, we've already slightly highlighted this, of course. Nathan chose to be brave himself. We spoke about Boro being a little bit more brave. You were brave yourself, weren't you, last week, and sort of highlighted the fact that Mitrovic hadn't yet scored against Middlesbrough. And honestly, as soon as you'd said that on the podcast, I was... Why I didn't put some money on it, but probably because the odds of Mitrovic scoring this season are next to nothing. It would have been worth it in a money sense. But I knew at some point or another he'd score, and probably an unnecessary foul from Matt Crooks on the edge of the box gives Fulham a chance to line up and get some bodies into our box. And of course, the quality of Harry Wilson, 9 times out of 10, he's going to hit the money with his delivery. Whips a great ball in fairness. I think our back line get a little bit confused of where Mitrovic has come from because he starts his run deep. Dijksteel, again, I think more so with the conditions, slips over, and it sort of just leaves Mitrovic unmarked from about 7 yards out. Just to, in fairness, it's a good header. You know, he directs a fairly powerful cross into the top of the net. I don't really think you can look at too much at Lumley for it. And Fulham take the lead, and Mitrovic wheels away. And I think I just glared at you from my seat. May have given you a certain hand gesture to show my disappointment. And yeah, it was written in the script, wasn't it, that Mitrovic would score after last week's podcast. But in terms of actually our part in the goal, I think you've got to criticise the marking, because to let Alexander Mitrovic have that much time and space in the box is just criminal, really.
Yeah, it doesn't make too much sense, does it? Letting a forward that scored 37 goals in 36 games appear in your 6-yard box unmarked. It doesn't make that much sense. But yeah, it was always going to be written in the stars. But it just goes to show, doesn't it? One real chance for Alexander Mitrovic all game, in a game where I thought he was relatively quiet, really. One chance, one goal, the match winner, and that's the reason he gets paid the big bucks, isn't it? Yeah, he starts his run from deep on the back stick of the not even on the back stick, on the end of Boro's defensive line. Stood with Matt Crooks, Alexander Mitrovic and Tosin Adarabioyo, 2 of the tallest men on the pitch, next to Boro's tallest man on the pitch. But why is no one else picking him up? Sort of just strange. But he just gets a free run, arcs his run perfectly, and just sort of saunters through a gap in the Middlesbrough defence and picks his header out beautifully. It's a fantastic cross from Wilson, right on the money, as you say, and a fantastic header as well. Mitrovic directs it right in that top corner with a lot of power on it, and yeah, he's the true definition of a goal scorer in this division, isn't he? I was looking at the goal scoring charts following the game on Wednesday night, and he scored 14 more than Solanke in second place, that's just outstanding, really. I don't think any of our players have scored 14 all season, and that's the gap between the top scorer and the second.
Yeah,
unbelievable figures for a forward in this division. But yeah, it's criminal marking. It shouldn't be allowed to happen, really. And Chris Wilder will have been seething with it. If there's a set piece coach at the club, they need to have a look at themselves as well, probably, because there's no way that you should be letting the top scorer in the division, arguably the best forward in the division, waltz into Boro's 6-yard box unmarked. It's just not acceptable.
Yeah, I think, potentially, I know Billy Sharp done horrible things to us at Bramall Lane, but for me, Mitrovic is levels above. I think, in fairness, I know this is a Middlesbrough podcast, but Mitrovic, from what I've seen this season, Mitrovic, Sharp, and Gyökeres or Gyökeres, however way you want to pronounce it, from Coventry, as much as it pains me to say, are 3 that massively stand out for me, miles ahead of anything that we have at the club currently. Of course, there's a reason why there's such big price tags banded around for these types of players. And in fairness, when you look at it, okay, Fulham paid a very healthy fee for Mitrovic, but once upon a time, as we spoke about, he nearly was ours on loan under Tony Pulis. Then you look at Sharp. Okay, that's sort of a little bit of a different one because Sheffield United picked him up whilst they were in League One. And then Vic, I'm just going to call him, from Coventry. Again, a little bit of a snip from them to get him off Brighton. And then you look at our forward line and it's pretty depressing in all honesty. Thinking that, we spoke about a game a few years ago. I can't remember if it was last podcast or the podcast before where we spoke about the last time that we'd scored. In fact, it was because we were talking about the goal deficit of 4 goals away from home. Talking about that Millwall game from a few years back where Bamford scores 1, Vossen gets a hat-trick. Okay, Vossen wasn't prolific, but since Patrick Bamford, I don't even think we've had a striker that looked like he was going to reach 15 goals, have we?
No, not a chance.
It's disappointing, isn't it? And I know Assombalonga got a few here and there. I think he probably got double figures a few times, but nothing really to catch the eye of any other Championship defences, which is, I mean, it's just the story of Middlesbrough's forward options over the years. But we don't want to get too sort of drawn into that because that's a whole different podcast in itself. From the moment that Fulham take the lead, actually, is when we really sat up and thought, well, actually, we should probably start trying to attack them here. Mark Bowler, who I thought was terrific when he come on against Fulham, very direct, wanted to get the ball in the box, wanted to try and get it behind that Fulham back line. Whips a great ball in from the left-hand side. Sparrow, in fairness, gets up very well and directs a header just past the far post, past Rodak's far post. I think it's actually a good header. I don't think it's as easy as what it perhaps looks. I think it's, for me, a good effort. I don't know how you felt about that one, but
yeah,
I thought it was probably a good effort rather than a bad miss.
Yeah, a good effort. It's quite far out and he's got to redirect it with a lot of pace to get there into that far corner, really. A good ball in from Bowler. A good idea to flick it into that far post. It's probably the only place he can really put it to beat Rodak. But yeah, it just goes past the post. Unlucky. His second chance of the game, really, for Sparrow, that. And then what follows is 2 chances. I think you can say both of them golden chances from 2 other forwards that both came off the bench at Peterborough, both scored at Peterborough, and arguably for both of them have maybe not Coburn's, but Watmore's especially, easier chances than he took at Peterborough. And he takes the one at Peterborough that's more difficult and misses the one that's more, well, looks to be easier. Coburn came off the bench. It seems to be the game plan now when we're looking for a goal. Throw pretty much every forward on, taking it back to Steve McLaren days. Brought Coburn on again. Pretty much everything coming down that left-hand side in the last few weeks. Even the same was at Peterborough when Jones did play. A lot of our play was coming down that left-hand side with Bowler. Fantastic ball in once again. And yeah, Coburn, in hindsight, he is offside. The linesman did put his flag up, whether that was for a goal kick or offside, I'm not sure, but he was just offside. And from 5-6 yards out, Coburn flicks the header wide of the far post. Again, an easier opportunity than Sperrat, but he's done the right thing in trying to flick it to that far post, to direct it away from Rodak again. But a big chance missed if the linesman doesn't see he's offside. I mean, the linesman is looking right across the line, but you know what EFL officials are like, he's probably missed it.
Yeah.
And then after that, again, down the left-hand side, Baller crosses the ball in. It takes deflection off Harrison Reed, who I thought, despite being a bit of a tricky customer on Wednesday night, was outstanding, just keeping Fulham ticking. Comes off the inside of his foot and finds its way to Watmore, who is okay at a slight angle, but about 6 to 8 yards out, and he blasts over the bar. And you look on the whole at our forwards there, 3 of them have missed 3 chances. Okay, Spiraz is the most difficult one out of the 3, but 3 forwards there, all missing chances. Mitrovic has 1 chance all game, scores. That's just how the cookie crumbles, I suppose, really, with championship forwards. You get forwards that are patchy and inconsistent and will miss easy chances, but then score worldies, and that's just the players that we've got at this current moment in time. We just can't seem to get that forward that when he gets 1 chance, bang, goal. It's just unfortunate, which is even more frustrating looking back on last week when I said that we've got 5 options up front that all look like they're having a bit of a good patch in front of goal. Certainly not the case now, with 3 of them missing chances, 2 of them missing fantastic chances. But yeah, we've always said with our forwards that these lads are inconsistent in front of goal, and you've just got to bear with them. Unfortunately, they will miss chances. That's just how things go. Mitrovic probably doesn't miss that many chances, and that's just the difference between the top side in the division, Fulham, who create chances but score chances, and the teams in the playoffs are around that top half, like Middlesbrough, who create chances, but it's 50-50 whether they take them or not.
Yeah, as you say, it's for me, apart from Isaiah Jones, I felt that little bit of extra quality perhaps may have made the difference in the end against Fulham. Do you know what? After a disappointing first half, I actually felt like the way we finished the game against Fulham was pretty good. I was happy with the substitutes, and Tav moved to wing back, who I thought was effective there. Riley McGree was introduced, and again, I thought he made a good impact. There was that slight chance where it gets onto McGree's right foot and he sort of swings at it. I know Tav was screaming for it and wants the ball there. Of course, he doesn't manage to slip them in. But the way that we finished that game, I felt, we're going to fly out the blocks against Hull. In my mind, it was, and I'll admit it, I've not criticised you, but, joked a little bit about the fact that you said about Mitrovic. I texted Nathan on Saturday morning and said, I've got a really good feeling about the day. In my mind, we were going to stick 3 or 4 past Hull. I was almost convinced of it. It seemed inconceivable that we would go and perform the way we did. And, what one thing, I was just watching Gary Neville's podcast, and he was talking about how you can't trust the Man United team. They can one week be excellent, and I know they're having some horrible results at the moment, but other weeks they can, perform like they did against Everton. And I thought at home, to be honest, there's no reason why we couldn't have gone at the end of the season and not lost a game at the other side. And, away, okay, that's a different story. I thought this team can be trusted at home. But actually, it just turned out to be not the case. And of course, we will move on to Hull now, Nathan. Firstly, team selection. Actually, I was very happy with it. Tav to right wing back. Okay, Jones misses out again. Ball as in, straight away that looks more attacking. Then, of course, we have McGree into the midfield, who I was happy with. I thought, Hull were going to sit deep, and a player with McGree's qualities would allow us to try and break through that back line that they have. And then, of course, 2 changes up top as well. Balogun and Connolly come in. I mean, for me, I don't know about you, Nathan, it probably would have been the team that I picked, to be honest.
Yeah, with the personnel available, Tavernier's impact at wing back when being moved there on Wednesday evening, you thought that everything would be fine and dandy with Tavernier at wing back, McGree in midfield. The forwards, you can pick and choose. I suppose the players that I said there, with Watmore, Sparrar and Coburn all missing chances on Wednesday night, all of them dropped to the bench, and Balogun, who had scored in his previous appearance, and then Connolly, who made a good impact against Peterborough the weekend before, them 2 in from the start, which I thought, yeah, it's a strong side. And not to be too critical, but should be able to do a job against Hull at home. Although something that did catch me by surprise on the morning of the game was that Hull are currently on the longest away unbeaten run in the division, stretching 12 games. Cough now 13 games, which really surprised me, actually, looking at the table and seeing them still down there. But that just shows how sort of poor their home form is, which we know what happened earlier on in the season as well. So,
it's just the story of Middlesbrough, isn't it?
It's funny. It is funny. If you don't take it too seriously, it is funny to look at. But yeah, the team did look strong. It did look like it could create opportunities at home, looking to bounce back after our first defeat at home since the 27th of November, I think it was, or the 29th of November against Preston, which is a long time ago. Eight home wins on the bounce, which is remarkable that we've gone that long winning at home. Wednesday night it wasn't to be. Saturday afternoon it wasn't to be, unfortunately. First half, limited chances, wasn't there, for Boro. I can't really remember too much threatening Matt Ingram in that first half. Baller had an effort that was deflected straight into his arms. A few things that were frustrating. Connolly going down through on goal. He may have had a nick.
I think, to be fair, I've looked at the replay. I think he's living on a prayer if he thinks that that's a penalty. He's just gone down like a sack of potatoes, to be honest.
Yeah, and then knocks it back to Balogun, who flicks it over the bar. Probably a better chance than it actually may seem, really. He probably could have done a bit more with that one. But another thing that was incredibly frustrating for me is players trying to do it all by themselves, really. And it's either them doing it all by themselves or just simply not picking their head up and trying to find a pass. On 2 occasions, Riley McGree down that left-hand side does one thing remarkably well in beating his man first time fantastically. And Balogun's in acres of space available for a cutback to get a strike out on goal on both occasions. On both occasions ignored. On both occasions McGree's dispossessed. Just so frustrating to watch in that first half. Down the right-hand side, I felt Crooks didn't have his best game, really. I felt he was struggling to link up with Tavernier as well as he would with Jones usually. Dijksteel, okay, going down that right-hand side again, just doing his standard thing, trying to make things happen down that right-hand side, whether he's overlapping or going and underlapping and trying to get down the inside.
Yeah.
But Hull had the best chance that first half, which was a poor move, really, from Boro all the way through. Losing the ball up the pitch on the halfway line. Two players, it was McNair and possibly Bowler.
I think it was just Bamba, of course, we haven't mentioned, with Dale Fry limped off, which, is a massive concern going into a massive Easter set of fixtures. But, of course, Dale Fry had limped off. I think Wilder said afterwards it was a calf. So, of course, Sol Bamba replaces him. And, yeah, they slide Honeyman in, don't they? And then...
Yeah, and then the lad ends up having a free run towards our 18-yard box, slides in Honeyman, and it looks for everything that he's going to score. Lumley is obviously going to go low. I can't blame him for that. And Honeyman does the only thing that a forwards can really do in that situation, which is loft it over the keeper. And luckily Tavernier is there to recover and clear it off the line. But an incredibly poor first half. No real chances created. Hull grew into the game gradually, I felt, in that towards the end of that first half as well. And yeah, just sort of lackluster, no energy, trying to go forward. Incredibly poor.
I think for me, I got the sense that Hull actually, throughout the game, you said grew in confidence, and I think that's a perfect way to phrase it, because for me, Hull almost seemed surprised at how little we were offering going forward. As you say, I think some of the criticism that I've seen of Riley McGree is completely unjustified. But yeah, of course, he was massively frustrating at the weekend, hanging on to the ball a little bit too long, almost every time he had it. It's evident to see that he's got massive quality on the ball. Probably something that we don't really have in terms of someone that is so intricate and can get past players with ease, really. But like you say, he beat a player, have an opportunity to cross, and then want to beat the player again, which was, frustrating. And to be honest, I think he looked just as frustrated at himself. But as I say, Hull, it started off, I thought that they are quite literally just going to sit as a block and just let us come on at them. And I think throughout the game, they crept up the pitch an extra few yards each sort of section of the game as it progressed. And then towards, the point where they do actually take the lead, of course, which we'll get onto, I think they were just amazed at how little we were offering. The forward line, again, massive question marks over that. We still haven't stumbled across a pairing that looks right for me. I know Connolly and Balogun seem to be the favoured pair at the moment, but as a pairing, I don't think they work at all. For me, I know we spoke about it against Peterborough, his goal record. Josh Coburn arguably deserves a start right now. I know he come on against Hull and didn't quite have the impact that he has had in previous games, but for me, I think he's probably doing more than any other forward at the moment, where I think if a ball goes into the box, I believe that he's got that striker's instinct that will get to the front post, not for 1 minute the same as a Mitrovic, but, that real goal-scoring instinct where he's going to find himself in positions where sort of similar to Peterborough, the ball will come off his thigh and go in. I don't get that feeling with Sparrow. I definitely don't get that feeling with Watmore, although I feel like he does offer a lot. Often when he comes on as a substitute, and Balogun and Connolly, really leaving a lot to be desired. I'm still not really convinced as to what type of forward Aaron Connolly is. I don't want to rip into people. I don't like doing that, but I just feel like, really, I look back at January now, and it's one of the questions. But I just want to ask you about it, Nathan. Okay, in terms of the type of players that we've brought in, it fits Chris Wilder's system, but actually, I'm not so sure if we've actually weakened our forward line since January.
I don't think it's improved, if I'm honest. Whilst we may have brought in forwards that suit the way that Chris Wilder wants to play football a bit more in front of goal, I don't really think that players, if you just want to throw up two names, so Connolly and Balogun, they're the two forwards that were brought in, and the two forwards that left were Onel Hernandez and Uche Ikpeazu. How many Balogun scored for us now? 4? Is it 3 or 4?
I think it's 3 now.
3. And Connolly scored 1 against Derby, 2 if you want to count the deflection against Birmingham.
I think even his goal against Derby's to be
dubious. So 5 at most. I don't think that really Uche or Aaron Connolly, or Onel Hernandez, if they were getting in the same position, they might not be getting in the same positions as the front two that we've got now. But with the chances that they have, I don't think that Hernandez and Ikpeazu would have scored less than Connolly and Balogun have at this current stage of the season. With how many games we've got to go? 6. With 6 games to go, I'm still unsure with who our best forward line is, and we've played 40 games so far this season. Okay, with maybe about 15 with Balogun and Connolly there as well. But 40 games into a season, you should know who your best forward is in front of goal. And I couldn't tell you. A lot of people say Coburn because he looks like a natural finisher, but he's not filled out into a man's body yet, if you get what I mean. He's not filled out to be built like an Alexander Mitrovic yet, or an Uche. He hasn't got that sort of man strength you have to tussle with championship centre-halves that are going to try and smash you about. I mean, Greaves the other day, and what's the other lad called?
Is it
Jones, Alfie Jones, both 6 foot odd. I know Coburn's a big tall lad, but both 6 foot odd tall centre-halves that are built very broad and would probably just try and knock Coburn about. It's very difficult to sort of hold your own against seasoned second-tier centre-halves when all the pressure's on you to score the goals for a team that's pushing forward. 40 games in and we still don't know our best forwards, which is a serious worry. And yeah, it's a very strange situation with the forward line. It really is.
So out of the forwards now, I'll put you under pressure and I'll answer as well. I think we had this conversation, I want to say probably the end of January time, and I think at that point I went with Sparrow and Watmore. Since then, my preferred front two has changed, but currently, what would be your starting front two? If you're in Chris Wilder's shoes, okay, you know, it might change depending on opposition, but what is our best front two?
Watmore is one because of his work rate, because of his pacing behind that he has. Although he's the most inconsistent finisher I've ever seen, where he scores the most difficult chances, like his goals against Huddersfield, his second one at Huddersfield, and his goal at Peterborough, but misses from 6 yards against Stoke and misses that one against Fulham. He's a strange centre forward. He'd be one, and genuinely, you could toss a coin over the other four. I'm really not sure. Balogun, when he went up front with Connolly, doesn't seem to offer that much, although he did against Peterborough. It's very hot and cold. Connolly, very hot and cold, doesn't really get in the positions to score goals. When he does, he's offside like Barnsley, and we'll get on to Hull.
Yeah, I think for me, with Connolly, the one thing, okay, not every striker is a goal scoring striker, and it sounds ridiculous to say that because that's more often than not what they're meant to do. But, you know, we also understand that there's certain forwards which are there to, you know, link up. And I think for me, out of all the strikers, if I look at it this way, Connolly, whenever he's on the pitch, looks least likely to score a goal. That's the way I'd put it.
It's a nightmare situation with the forwards. It really is. At this current time, despite them missing chances against Fulham, I'd opt for Watmore and Coburn, really. Although I've just argued the points for and against every forward and said that Coburn will find it difficult to deal with the strength of Championship centre halves at this current time because he is only a young lad. I think that given a chance, he's probably more likely to finish it than the others.
Yeah, that's what I'd judge it on as well. I think if you know, we've just said about Connolly there, for me, looks the least likely to score. When Josh Coburn's on the pitch, he looks the most likely to score. And, you know, I completely agree with you. I thought when he come on against Hull, he probably, you know, we probably didn't play to his strengths, but also I thought the Hull defenders dealt very well with him, knew that their experience could be lent on, and they dealt with him that way. But, you know, we've seen Josh Coburn start against Luton. We've seen him start against West Brom, scored 2 goals, of course, as that pretty amazing stat about his goals to game ratio. For me, I'd have him in that bracket of starting. And again, I think it is a little bit of a toss of a coin. You know, I think it would probably be between, I was about to say Connolly there, it wouldn't be between him. Sorry, Aaron. It would be between Watmore and Balogun for me. I watch Balogun and I think there's, you know, there's certain players where you watch them and you think there's a player in there. There is something there where I think, you know, he will. And we've seen it in glimpses, haven't we? That strike away at Birmingham, you know, even the instinct to go and score against Peterborough last week, there is that instinct there. And I do think it's just, it probably hasn't come out yet. And in fairness to him and some of the other forwards, it's hard to find consistency when the front two change almost every week. And for me, I think for that reason, I'd probably, and as well, I should say, Watmore delivers an awful lot more as a substitute for me than what he does whenever he starts. So I'd probably lean towards Balogun and Coburn and just see how that works. But of course, I would not be shocked. And to be honest, I fully expect Connolly and Balogun to start at Bournemouth.
Yeah, I don't think there's any wrong answer here with who our best front two is, because we don't know And really, I don't think Chris Wilder will have an idea of what he wants from his forwards, and he keeps persisting with Balogun and Connolly at the same time as a front pairing, and he must be seeing something from the pair of them to keep persisting with it, or else he wouldn't. Which that's the only thing that I can think of, that he must be seeing something that we're not, because on Saturday things just didn't happen between the pair. In that first half, especially incredibly quiet. The same was for West Brom at home a few months ago. A pair of them started up front and couldn't really create a whole lot, but then they played at Peterborough together and they bounced off each other quite well, created chances going down either side really well. Hot and cold strikers for you. Whereas as we played against Mitrovic this week, he's hot.
He's consistently on fire, isn't he?
Yeah.
As the song goes. And
that's
another thing. Do you know what? Just frustrated me more than anything. Just something so minuscule that annoyed me. So obviously, Fulham's number one sort of chant is Mitro's on fire, isn't it? Before the game starts on Wednesday night, what song comes on in the stadium? Free from Desire. Why play that when you just know it's going to get the Fulham fans bouncing? And to be fair, as much as they get a lot of criticism, I didn't think the Fulham fans were that bad on Wednesday night.
No, I didn't either. But we've gone on a massive tangent here with the forwards.
That's what these results have done to us.
It is. It's crazy that we're picking flaws with Boro here, and there's been 2 defeats. But anyway, yeah, Connolly scores in the second half, the start of the second half. He's offside, as I've just alluded to there. A good move to bring Watmore on and Coburn. Watmore as a slightly deeper forward in that number 10 position, almost looking to link play between midfield and attack. And he slides in Connolly, but he's offside. He does well to slot it away in all fairness. But yeah, still 0-0. And then the just I can't even find the words to describe what happens next, really. Hull go up at Boro's end of the pitch. One of the only times that they decided to sort of find their way into Middlesbrough's half of the pitch, if I'm honest. And we didn't say anything about a Hull preview in the last podcast. But if we did, we wouldn't have said star men after what happened on Wednesday night. But if I was to say star men, it would have been Keane Lewis Potter, and he comes in off that left-hand side and strikes a pretty routine shot with his right foot across goal into the far corner with one bounce slightly in front of Joe Lumley. But upon replay, I'll just let you take it from there, Chris, because I know you want to have a chat about Mr. Joe Lumley in the Middlesbrough goal.
Yeah. I think going back, I want to say 3 podcasts ago, possibly 4. I think it was after the Barnsley game, that Barnsley horror show.
Yeah.
We were talking about the need for Joe Lumley to be replaced in goal. He'd let us down again. And then I might have my timeline slightly wrong here, but I think we possibly played Tottenham around about that time, and he made some great saves in the game. I've got to give him credit for that. And I think that probably redeemed him for a few games after. Since then, okay, yes, we won 4-0, but against Peterborough, he was playing rush goalkeeper, running out, slide tackle in thin air, nearly costing us goals. And then this game at the weekend, Hull, I've watched that goal back, and I don't know why, because every time it's just annoyed me more. I'm actually a little bit lost for words as to how it's got to this stage of the season. I know we've spoken about a forward line, but you've got more options to play, especially when you play two up front. You've got 5 or 4 or 5 options to say, well, we might try him. By this stage of the season, you should have a concrete goalkeeper who you are set on. Middlesbrough have exactly the opposite to that, because Joe Lumley is costing us valuable points. He has done throughout the season. He lost his place initially under Neil Warnock and somehow got it back, I think probably down to his distribution. But in terms of being a goalkeeper, and I know there's more to the role than that, I should say, he needs to come out the team. It's as simple as that for me. He is, I mean, quite. It's not, I want to laugh, but it's more infuriating more than anything. You see these accounts crop up with a selection of videos and highlights of the games where he has cost us, and you actually look back at that and think, how is he still in the team? It's just not good enough for a team that want to be challenging in the top 6. And had we have got results this week, we found ourselves in the position that Forest are, looking at it second and thinking, tell you what, with 6 games to go, it's not out of the realms of possibility. But now, of course, it's not solely to blame on Joe Lumley, but if he doesn't make the mistake against Hull, we come away with a point, and I don't think there's much more than that to say. There needs to be a change in goal, whether that be Luke Daniels. I think that would be my choice. I know that the obvious flaw in Daniels' game is his distribution, and I know Chris Wilder wants his keepers to be comfortable with the ball at the feet. And we'll get on to a poll that we tweeted out, and it got quite a large number of responses. So, we've got a decent amount of votes to sort of decide on what kind of mood the fan base is showing. And it's quite clear from the poll. But Nathan, going back to you, and do you know what? Before I stop and just breathe a little bit, the most telltale thing for me is the fact that Chris Wilder is not defending him anymore, because he said in his press conference after, I can't defend him. I've held back for a long time. It's a shot that he should save. And for me, that just signals Chris Wilder losing complete faith in him. Now, I'm unsure whether at this stage of the season he'll make a change. I think it has to be done. But what about you, Nathan? Because for me, it's simply not good enough.
Yeah, as I said there, the effort in isolation from Lewis Potter, it's a tame effort that should be dealt with. It shouldn't even trouble him. For me, it's not even a case of the shot's got a lot of power behind it, and he should parry it wide. He should catch it. He should gather it in, really. And then looking back on the actual sort of backlash, like seconds after it hitting the net, he blames Bamba. Well, what's Bamba meant to do? It's a shot. You're meant to deal with it. It's a shot on target. Bamba's not getting in the way of it. It's a shot from an angle. You're meant to save it. But yeah, it's not the first time this season this has happened. And really, even after Barnsley, where 2 of the efforts were incredibly just avoidable had he dived or kept his legs shut, for the ones at Barnsley, I said there, you probably, it's strange. You don't know what to do. And especially at this stage of the season now, I wouldn't know what to do with the goalkeeper situation. We have 3 goalkeepers on our books currently: Joe Lumley, Luke Daniels, and Solbrin. So far this season, Lumley's been number 1 for the most part. And he started off relatively okay at the start of the season. And then we played QPR towards the back end of August. And the first warning sign was him letting the ball through his legs from Lyndon Dykes from the tightest angle ever. And you don't know how it's gone in. There's one. And then you sort of think, right, it's one. Like, eradicate mistakes like that and it'll be all right. And then they just keep coming and coming and coming. The Birmingham one where he came out to try and punch it and Roberts just heads it over him. And then he was dropped after that. And you think, right, we'll see what Daniels is about. Didn't really put a step wrong, really, when it comes to actually being in goal and making saves. He didn't really have a clanger or anything like that. But with a change of manager and a change of style, Lumley found his way back in because he's better at distributing the ball. We've seen Daniel's distribution and it's poor, but Lumley's isn't great. I'd argue with anyone that his distribution isn't great. I don't care what the stats say about successful passes or whatever. It's not great. He's not good with his feet. It's blatantly obvious to see that he's not good with his feet because every time we play at home or away from home, you hear everyone gasp for breath when the ball's passed back to him, or he takes a touch, or he comes flying out of his box to the halfway line like he did at Peterborough last week and nearly got lobbed from the halfway line. So this one is arguably the worst one because it comes at a time where it's a game where Boro should take something from it. At a time of the season where
we need the points.
We need the points. It's literally a battle between teams in and around that top 6 to better each other's results. And this weekend, we've had an absolute stinker. I've seen a lot of people say that if you lose to Hull at home, you should be nowhere near the top 6. All right, well, Bournemouth got beat by Hull at home, so that just shuts that argument up straight away. But in the circumstances, getting beat by Hull at home with a goalkeeping error that is that blatant, it sort of signals that change is needed in that department. But then who do you pick? So the poll, I guess.
Yeah, the poll, that leads us quite nicely onto the poll. So obviously after the incident, after the mistake, we thought that to gain a little bit of the fan base, and of course, it's not the full fan base, but a decent selection. In the end, 4,612 people voted on this poll with 3 options as to who should remain number 1 or who should come into the team as number 1 for the remaining games of the season. The results come in. 56% of that 4,612 opted for Solbrin. 25% wanted Lumley to remain. 19% put their faith in Luke Daniels. Now, just looking at the poll, of course, we should say, this was posted on Twitter, so, there's no reason for other fan bases and things like that to vote on it, of course, but the majority will have been Middlesbrough fans voting on this. I think for me, this raises a whole different question, because I personally think there's no chance that Solbryn would be trusted, and I'm not saying that he's not capable at all, but because of the position that we're in and the amount of games left and the pressure that's going to be on whoever plays the remaining games in goal for Middlesbrough this season, I don't think Chris Wilder would put a fairly untested Solbryn in goal. In the future, that might be different. But at the moment, and I think we've kind of both spoken about it, I think it just wouldn't happen. I think if there's a change in goal, it'll be Luke Daniels that comes into the team. And actually, the lowest percentage was Luke Daniels in terms of votes. So that sums up how people are feeling with the possibility of that change. It really is just not needed at all at this stage of the season. Like we say, with strikers, of course, we should have a more solid idea of who our forward should be. But in terms of a goalkeeper, I'd be fairly confident that almost every other team in the league at this point of the season knows that they have their number one in goal. Okay, they might want an improvement of it in the summer, but they probably won't be changing goalkeeper with this amount of games left. And, we haven't been blessed with keepers, especially, last season. Marcus Bettinelli started off great, ended up being a nightmare. But actually, I think possibly he ranks above Lumley. And for me, there has to be a change. I'd put it down to this, as simple as it is. And, I don't want to make it out as though it's just you're only in net, you only need to save things, you only need to catch things, because there's a whole load more to goalkeeping in this day. You've got to be trusted to play out from the back. You've got to be a little bit of a sweeper keeper, especially in Chris Wilder's team. But in terms of who I would feel confident if a cross or a shot come in the playoff final, and I'd feel as though out of the three keepers, who's going to make a save, I definitely wouldn't pick Joe Lumley. I'd pick Luke Daniels. And for me, that's the only reason that he gets the nod. Nathan, I don't know how you feel about that.
I think just slightly looking back on the decision to recall Bryn in January.
It's bizarre. It's so bizarre.
So, out on loan at Queen of the South, playing well. Queen of the South fans saying that he was probably their player of the season up until that point. And he was recalled pretty much as January began. And we had Mansfield the following weekend. And looking at that, you thought, recalled, get him in for Mansfield, especially with the COVID situation around the club at the time. You thought, he's been in a different camp. You can come in, isolate, play at Mansfield on the Saturday, round 3 the FA Cup. Yeah, we'll get him bedded in and get him his first appearance for Boro. Didn't make the squad. Complete shock. I was like, well, what's the reason of bringing him back then? That would have been the perfect opportunity, although it's in absolutely no sort of pressure compared to where we are in the season now. It'd have been a perfect opportunity to boost his confidence a bit in a game that, yeah, okay, we want to progress in the cup, but it didn't really matter, and it was just sort of a free game that broke up a difficult schedule over Christmas. It would have been a perfect opportunity to boost his confidence there, but it wasn't taken, and he hasn't made an appearance for the first team at all since being recalled. you think that that decision's baffling, and I'd agree. But if he, Stojanovic went out the door at the same time, so he could have just been brought back to sit as a number 3. But he was gaining valuable experience at Queen of the South there. So why bring him back? Just sign someone on a free from who knows where, just to be there in case called upon.
Yeah.
But I think I'd be the same with you, if I'm honest. I think Daniels would be the man to step in. Although with the ball at his feet, he's not the greatest. As long as he doesn't drop clangers, like we saw on Saturday, then that doesn't matter to me. It's just incredibly frustrating. Again, same as our forward situation. We don't know our best forwards 40 games in the season, and we don't know, well, really, we don't know our best goalkeeper is. As the fans, we don't know our best goalkeeper is. We've never seen Solbrin play. You can toss a coin over Bryn and Lumley. Daniels and Lumley. It's just a bit of a nightmare at this current time. And no matter where we are next season, because there is still slim possibility that we do nick in. The first part of call when it comes to the transfer window has got to be goalkeeper.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think anyone would argue against that. And actually, just finishing off, it feels like we haven't actually spoke very much about the whole game. The last real action of the game was a shot from Marcus Tavernier. Tests Ingram, he saves it well. And that was about it in terms of the game. It wasn't like Fulham where we had clear-cut chances in the final part of the game. We just didn't. It's as simple as that. Sort of finish up on that. The question marks over the goalkeepers remain. In the questions, listener questions, of course, as we usually do, tweeted out, asking for opinions and things like that. Jinxie got in touch. I think that was the name. I'm guessing it's some sort of nickname. So, yeah, we'll go with that. And said, you've got to question the decision not to strengthen in goal in January. Couldn't agree more. I could not. That is one area where I think the podcast after January, we went through every transfer and said, how do you rate it? And, we couldn't really judge it too much because, we hadn't seen all that much game time from the likes of Connolly and Balogun and those sorts. But even since January, although it probably hasn't been talked about as much, there was an opportunity there for me and we've completely missed it. I look at QPR and okay, yes, they are having an absolutely torrid time at the moment. From what looked like a guaranteed playoff spot, they've fallen off a cliff, really. But they've brought in 3 keepers, and actually some of them have been injured. They had David Marshall, who's out for the season, their usual keeper, out for the season. Then they bring in Kieran Westwood, who was without a club. There's a goalkeeper there, which I'd be almost 90% sure would have done a better job than any of our current goalkeepers. You probably can't, throw Bryn into that because he's a, untested goalkeeper at this level. But for me, I look at January now and I think, okay, I know Wilder talks about the medium to long term, but in the position that we were in at the start of this week, we might not make the playoffs. We might get into the playoffs and get knocked out. We might even go on and win it. But I will always look back at this time in the season and think, well, we had an extremely, extremely good chance to get in those playoffs and really, give us a good chance of getting in there. and this decision not to improve on the goalkeeper front, I think, should we not do it, will probably be highlighted as one of, if not the main issue as to why we didn't.
I completely agree. At the time in January, you were saying to me, we need to strengthen in the goalkeeper department, and I was still sort of a bit unsure with it all, really. I thought maybe not the worst thing in the world that we haven't strengthened. In hindsight, wow. It should have been first port of call. But yeah, you just got to hope from now until the end of the season, really, that whoever it may be, whether it be Lumley, whether it be Daniels, whether it be Bryn,
whether it be Leo,
whether it be Rory, who knows, whether it be you, me, anyone, whoever starts in goal for Middlesbrough from now until the end of the season just needs full backing. No matter what's happened throughout this season, if it's Lumley, just back him. There's no point in sort of kicking up a fuss, is there, anymore? He needs full backing. There's no point just battering his confidence even more than it probably already is at the minute. Although we have just slated him for about half an hour on here. It's.
I think it's clear to see though. Whoever comes in, there's going to be an insane amount of pressure on whoever it is, whether that's Lumley, whether that be a new addition, whether the unlikely decision is made and Solbryn's given a run of games, which I just think there's absolutely no chance personally. But if Daniels comes in, there's going to be huge pressure on him. But actually, I'm at the stage now where if any of those two come in that haven't been playing, I don't think they could do worse. So I don't think I could get on anyone's back more than what we currently have in goal. I said earlier on this podcast that I don't like slating people, but it's just got to that point where everyone's aware of it. We're a championship club that have aspirations to be in and around the playoffs, and currently our goalkeeper is not of that level, and it's as simple as that for me.
It is. It's nailed on. Bang on. He's not performing to the levels of a player, a goalkeeper that is in a playoff competing team. All the sides that are in and around the playoffs that are pushing in this final stage of the season are pretty much all settled defensively. And we are, in terms of the back three, although Fry, we're going to have to wait for his injury. But they've all had a set goalkeeper. And we're in this situation now where who knows what Chris Wilder's going to select in a few days' time in an absolute crunch clash down on the south coast at my least favourite ground.
Apart from Oakwell
and Bramall Lane in English football, because it's a horrible, horrible place and hunting ground for Middlesbrough, isn't it? We are, of course, talking about Bournemouth, AFC Bournemouth, the Vitality Stadium. I think we played them around this exact time last year.
Yeah.
Under Neil Warnock, and it was. I'm not even going to say it. Anyway.
Do you know what? I actually wasn't sure what you were going to say there, but for whatever it was, I'm glad you haven't.
We were seventh at the time. That's all I want to say.
Right.
So going into this game, they've got a very tough running of Bournemouth. They're in second place, at this current time of recording, and they're 6 points ahead of Nottingham Forest, who are in third. But they've got a very, very difficult running coming up of Bournemouth, and Middlesbrough's included in that. They've just come off the back of a loss away at West Brom, where Andy Carroll caused a bit of a.
But who doesn't he cause carnage?
Who doesn't he cause carnage against? And then off the back of a draw at Bramall Lane at the weekend, which could have been again a defeat. It was two fantastic opportunities for Sheffield United. One fantastic save from Mark Travers in goal for Bournemouth, and a sitter missed by Sheffield United centre-half in the 94th minute, which probably cost them all 3 points, which in hindsight is a good result for Middlesbrough, because that only puts us 3 points behind Sheffield United in the last playoff place. But there we are. Got to hear home record against Middlesbrough is excellent. We're going to have to say it. I'm going to have to say it. Every time, apart from once maybe, where we drew 0-0 years ago when Karanka just came at the football club, every time since that we've been in the Vitality, we concede 3 minimum.
Yeah.
Take from that what you will, but we'll move swiftly onwards. They've got a fantastic side in terms of personnel. We all know that they splashed the cash in January. Last year they got beaten in the playoff semi-final by Brentford, and as a result, really had to sell a few players. Dan Juma was the main one, who's just scored in the Champions League quarter-final against Bayern Munich, which shows the level of player that they had last season. But they haven't quite sort of balanced the books yet. They've gone for one last push, really. This is all or nothing for them, I think. They've been in the Championship. This is the second season now, and they've thrown money at it to try and get themselves back up. And for pretty much 70-80% of the season, it's looked like, for any betting man, that Fulham and Bournemouth are going to be your top two. But with this final few games to go, it's getting nervy for them, and it's not looking too nice. Hopefully, with the way things are going for them, off the back of two nervy results, and with what's to come for them, with Forest breathing down their neck, hopefully they're starting to feel the pressure a little bit, and it's the perfect game for Boro to come back into, where we can just get back to basics, really get back to basics, play our game, and just get that confidence back, really, because that's what we need. 2 defeats on the bounce is making everyone panic a little bit, including me and you. As this podcast's gone on, I've felt the time ticking along, and I've felt we're just rambling in a panic at at the past results. But yeah, Bournemouth away, Good Friday, difficult test. They've even thrown it on Sky Sports just for added just
pressure.
Just pressure, yeah. Just pressure's making me crumble just speaking about it.
You look, just speaking about it, you know, you're rubbing your eyes. I hope you're not crying in fear yet. I know there's always a chance when you go away to Bournemouth that it could end in tears. And a large amount of times, as you say, it has ended in tears. You know, the 3 goals. It's almost a theme of those away games at Bournemouth where we will concede 3. Minimum, yeah. I should say that. But as you say, Bournemouth, you know, they're a team with an abundance of attacking threat. I mean, even the deadline day signings, if we'd have signed those across 2 seasons, I would have been jumping through hoops. So to sign them all in one day is quite frankly ridiculous. Of course, they added Nat Phillips to the defence, who was playing at the San Siro early on this season in the Champions League. Todd Cantwell, I know, I think he's had a few injuries since he's been there and hasn't really managed to get fully started. Siriki Dembele, who every time I've seen us play against Peterborough over the last few seasons, I've always been impressed with. Dangerous, fast, can play on the wing or centrally. Kiefer Moore, who I know had a bad injury when he first went there as well. I believe he might be back.
I'm not sure, but I hope not.
Or close to being back. And then without all of that, just the small task of dealing with Dom Solanke as well, who's on 25 goals already this season. So it should be a fairly easy day at the office, Nathan.
Yeah, it should be. It's the one fixture that I always look for when we're in the same division as Bournemouth and just think, well, write that one off.
Yeah.
Because Bournemouth away is just horrible memories. The one standout was the Premier League season. Ramirez got himself sent off after about 20 minutes for diving. And we got pumped 4-0. It's not a nice place to go. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult, but then again, every game from now until the end of the season is going to be difficult. A difficult game on the Friday, Good Friday, where if we get a result, it puts us right back into things, I think. And then following that, a quick flight back up the country, players back in training Saturday, Sunday, with the small matter of current fourth placed Huddersfield Town at the Riverside, 12:30 kickoff on Sky Sports, again, because they love the Boro, on 12:30, Huddersfield Town, another difficult test. I've surprised everyone this season, surprised me especially. I did pre-season predictions before the season started, and I actually had Huddersfield to finish in the bottom 3 or 4 places. I can't remember. I might have even predicted them to get relegated to League One, which may be the worst prediction of the season so far. They're in 4th place, outperformed everyone's expectations, but at the Riverside, hopefully with a big crowd over Easter weekend, we have to put things right. We have to sort this sort of slight lapse of home form. We have to sort it out. We've got 4 home games left. Is it 4? 3? 3 home games left. Huddersfield, Stoke, Cardiff before Stoke. 3 difficult home games. The first one beginning with Huddersfield Town. Carlos Corberan's done a fantastic job there to turn them round. Last season, they were poor under him first season, but they're always a difficult test. Let's just hope for Duncan Watmore doing Duncan Watmore things, scoring difficult goals against Huddersfield. Last season, he turned into Messi and ran through everyone and scored at the Riverside behind closed doors. And this season, it was two goals, one fantastic one at the John Smith Stadium that gave Boro 3 points. And from then on, actually, which really surprised me, after that defeat in November for Huddersfield, they went something like 15 to 18 games unbeaten in the league. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, watching that day, it's quite a... I think looking back at this season, regardless of what happens, that Huddersfield game will always be one that sticks out in the memory because, it was after Chris Wilder's initial first 2 games at the Riverside. Obviously, we'd just come back off that defeat against Preston. Probably didn't deserve to lose the game. Probably could have won the Millwall game as well. And then, almost overnight, the style completely changed. I feel like everything just went right for us that day. We were terrific. Still probably up there with one of the best performances we've put out all season, especially away from home at a place with Huddersfield, as you say, that were going, not by any stretch terribly at that point of the season. So yeah, we've proven that we can beat them. Of course, it's not to say that it's going to be the same case again at all. We're not daft enough to make that prediction. But
not after last week, we're not.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. In terms of the threat that Huddersfield possess, one man who, again, the theme of Boropolis Podcast, we're very pessimistic. Well, at least I'm pessimistic. You're more optimistic, I'd say. But one theme that is, very prevalent and has been throughout the season, those sort of strikers, and I feel like I say it every week, the Martin Waghorns of the world, championship experience, goals in abundance. But this time we have that plus an ex-forward coming back, Jordan Rhodes. He started in Huddersfield's away win at Hull the last time they played. Didn't score, but I'd hazard a guess that he may play. I might be wrong with that.
Possibly Ward as well, who is another one of them forwards, championship experience. Scored, I think he's Huddersfield top scorer this season, actually. Danny Ward, been around the block a bit, been at Rotherham, Cardiff, Huddersfield prior to actually coming back. But two forwards there that got championship experience. And yeah, Rhodes especially is one of them that has the sirens in my head whirring a little bit. And especially with players like Sorba Thomas at left wing back with bags of pace and fantastic delivery, putting balls on a plate for him. And off the other side as well, Harry Toffolo. I know plenty about him because he's ex-Lincoln, so none of them, where I go to university, shut up about him, especially telling me that he's the top assister for defenders in the Championship this season. He's got double figures and he scored Huddersfield's winner against Hull in their last game, although they are playing tonight as well against Luton, which is a difficult game, and that a lot of us will be keeping our eyes on, with both sides being in the Championship playoff race. But a difficult Easter period coming up with team selection issues aplenty, I think, and a week where Boro certainly haven't made it easy for themselves going from now until the end of the season. But when have Boro ever done things easier?
Never is the answer, Nathan. I think that's gone on for long enough now, to be honest. We don't want to worry or upset anyone any more than we already have, and I'm sure those Boro results this week have done just that already. But from me and Nathan, unless I've missed anything, I don't think I have, Nathan. I always like to just double check.
Don't think so.
But we've covered two disappointing results. We've covered the goalkeeper debate and the forward debate. We've previewed two massive, massive games for the club ahead of Easter. I just want to quickly say, I know I shamelessly plugged it last week. For anyone that showed any support to my final project, School of Boro, a massive thank you, because, hopefully the support that it got will get me a decent grade at university. Very lovely. From me and Nathan, that is all for this week's Boropolis Podcast. As always, do subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you think of some of the situations we've talked about. Give us a nice review to cheer us up after this week on any audio platforms. And yes, from me and Nathan, that has been another episode of the Boropolis Podcast, and we'll see you again next week.